In the shadowy corridors of history where truth and artifice often blur, there exists an empire of narratives, a vast orchestration of thought meticulously crafted not by poets or philosophers, but by spy masters and agents. This empire, built brick by invisible brick, was the handiwork of the Central Intelligence Agency, a symphony of propaganda that played its haunting melody across continents, languages, and ideologies. At its zenith, the CIA's propaganda network wielded an influence that reached deep into the hearts of nations, bending the arc of public opinion with an elegance both chilling and awe-inspiring. The story begins in the aftermath of World War II, an era when the world teetered between two opposing ideologies, capitalism and communism. The Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA, had already laid the foundation for covert operations. But it was the CIA that would take these embryonic efforts and transform them into a sprawling global machine capable of reshaping perceptions on an unprecedented scale. One of the earliest manifestations of this effort was in post-war Europe, a continent scarred by war and vulnerable to ideological infiltration. The CIA's architects, fearing the siren call of Soviet communism, sought to counteract its allure by infiltrating mass media. Newspapers, journals, and broadcasting stations became tools in a quiet but fierce cultural war. Paris Match, the French journal, and Encounter, a British literary magazine, were but two of the many publications nurtured with clandestine funds. Their pages, filled with nuanced arguments and persuasive rhetoric, sought to combat leftist ideologies with a sophistication that masked their origins. At the center of this intricate web stood Frank G. Wisner, the CIA's covert action chief. Wisner envisioned his propaganda network as a mighty Wurlitzer, a grand organ capable of playing any tune the agency desired. From its pipes emanated narratives designed to sway minds, shape ideologies, and destabilize adversaries. The Wurlitzer was not just a metaphor, it was a reality. Over 500 news and public information organizations across the globe became part of this clandestine orchestra, their editors and journalists either complicit or unwitting participants in this grand symphony of influence. While some saw this as a necessary bulwark against the spread of communism, others questioned the ethics of such manipulation. Was it justifiable to bend the truth in the name of freedom? The CIA's defenders argued that in a world where Soviet influence infiltrated every level of discourse, countering with equal subtlety was essential. Critics, however, warned of the blowback, a term used to describe the unintended consequences when propaganda meant for foreign audiences seeped back into American consciousness, distorting domestic perceptions and policy. The financial threads that connected the CIA to its media assets often led to editorial control. In some instances, the agency created newspapers and journals outright, using shell corporations to conceal their origins. In others, they injected funds into struggling publications, effectively becoming silent partners. These funds allowed the CIA to subtly dictate content, steering narratives without overtly dictating editorial lines. This quiet guidance turned seemingly independent voices into powerful tools of influence. Consider the case of Quest, a political journal that floated across the Indian subcontinent in the 1960s. Ambassador John Kenneth Galbraith, upon discovering that the publication was funded by the CIA, described it as an exercise in sub-zero intellectual competence. Yet, its very existence highlighted the extent of the CIA's reach. In a region as vast and complex as South Asia, the agency sought to shape discourse by planting seeds of Western ideology, even if the execution sometimes left much to be desired. Galbraith's intervention to shut down Quest was emblematic of the delicate balance between diplomacy and covert operations. While the ambassador recognized the potential damage such a crude effort could inflict on America's image, the CIA saw it as a necessary experiment in psychological warfare. This tension between overt statecraft and covert manipulation defined much of the agency's propaganda efforts. The CIA's ventures into broadcasting were equally ambitious. Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, financed by the agency, became beacons of anti-communist messaging, their signals piercing the Iron Curtain to reach audiences in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. These stations were not merely tools of propaganda, they were lifelines of information, offering alternative narratives to those trapped behind the ideological walls of the Cold War. Yet, not all such ventures met with success. Radio Free Asia, launched in the early 1950s, faced the logistical challenge of reaching audiences in mainland China, where radio receivers were scarce. An audacious plan to distribute radios via balloons launched from Taiwan ended in failure when the winds carried the devices back to their point of origin. Despite these setbacks, the agency's commitment to using the airwaves as a tool of influence remained undeterred. The written word proved to be one of the CIA's most versatile tools. Through a network of publishing houses, some legitimate and others little more than fronts, the agency produced and disseminated over 1,000 books. These range from scholarly works to popular novels, each carefully calibrated to advance American interests. Among the most famous examples was the Penkovsky Papers, a purported diary of a Soviet defector. While the book's authenticity was later questioned, its impact as a piece of anti-Soviet propaganda was undeniable. Even the literary world was not immune to the agency's reach. Peter Matthiessen, celebrated author and naturalist, began work on his novel Partisans while serving as a CIA operative in Paris. Though the agency did not dictate his creative output, his dual roles as writer and spy underscored the blurred lines between art and intelligence. Beneath the intrigue and subterfuge lies a more profound question: what is the human cost of such manipulation? For every journalist who accepted CIA funds, knowingly or unknowingly, there were countless readers whose perceptions were shaped by narratives crafted in Langley. The agency's efforts, while often brilliant in their execution, carried the risk of eroding trust in the very institutions they sought to protect. And yet, the CIA's propaganda machine was not merely a tool of deception, it was also a reflection of its times. In a world where information was both weapon and shield, the agency's operatives saw themselves as warriors in a battle of ideas. They wielded words with the precision of surgeons, crafting messages designed to cut through the noise of competing ideologies. Today, the mighty Wurlitzer lies largely dismantled, its pipes silenced by public revelations and shifting priorities. Yet its legacy endures, a testament to the power of narrative in shaping history. The story of the CIA's propaganda network is not merely one of covert operations and geopolitical strategy. It is a story of humanity's enduring struggle to understand and control the forces that shape our perceptions. In the end, the true mystery lies not in the actions of the CIA but in the questions they leave behind. What does it mean to wield such power? And what is the responsibility of those who, knowingly or unknowingly, become its instruments? The answers, like the shadows cast by the agency's work, remain elusive.
If you're reading this now, odds are I've already left town.